South Korea is a model that fascinates the entire world. Many consider it an economic miracle due to its impressive development since the 1960s. Today, it is not only one of the most advanced and influential economies in Asia, but also a true global power. From shipbuilding to high-tech industries, including automobile production and finance, South Korea has managed to assert itself in key sectors on the international stage. But this success is not a mere stroke of luck. How did a country that was once a field of ruins after the Korean War manage to become one of the most powerful in the world while facing numerous internal and external challenges? The answer lies not simply in brilliant economic management, but in a complex set of historical, geopolitical, and social factors that have shaped its unique economic model. Yet behind this success, many questions remain. Can this model last? And if so, at what cost? Today, we will dive into the fascinating history of South Korea, explore its current challenges, and understand what could hinder its continued rise. The roots of the South Korean miracle. The history of South Korea cannot be reduced to a simple economic success story. To understand how it evolved, we must go back to the end of the Korean War in 1953. At that time, the Korean peninsula was divided between the north, under communist control, and the south, which aligned itself with capitalism. What is often overlooked is that the war never truly ended. Although an armistice was signed, the two countries technically remain at war to this day. In reality, the South did not immediately become the democratic model it is today. The first few decades after the war were marked by coups, authoritarian dictators, and authoritarian economic policies. These years were a period of turbulence, with several governments succeeding each other, often by force, with questionable elections and personality cults. In such a context, the South seemed as likely to become a dictatorship as its northern neighbor. Their economies were initially nearly identical, though North Korea benefited from abundant natural resources and strategic relations with the USSR and China. The first advantages: international aid and liberalization. The first major turning point for South Korea was the massive aid it received from the United States. As part of the Cold War, South Korea became a bastion against communism in Asia. Not only did the United States provide military and economic aid, but they also brought technical expertise that allowed the country to rebuild more quickly. Even today, the American military presence in South Korea, with more than 24,000 soldiers stationed there, continues to play an indirect but crucial role in the country's economy. However, it was only at the end of the 1980s that South Korea truly began its transition to a free market model. At this time, civil rights were restored, fair elections were held, and the country began opening up to global trade. This liberalization process allowed industrial giants such as Hyundai, Samsung, LG, and Kia to grow with active government support. This state-backed support allowed these companies to emerge as major global players. What is particularly fascinating is that South Korea succeeded in integrating into globalization at a strategic moment. In the 1980s, China was not yet the industrial giant it would later become, and South Korea positioned itself in high-value-added sectors like shipbuilding, electronics, and automobiles, while benefiting from relatively low production costs. The globalization game: opportunity and competition. Globalization played a crucial role in South Korea's economic rise. Specifically, the Plaza Accord of 1985, which strengthened the Japanese yen, paved the way for South Korean competition in sectors where Japan had once dominated, such as electronics and automobiles. With a still relatively cheap workforce and growing technical expertise, South Korea exploited this timing to establish itself. The country also adopted a smart strategy by focusing not only on low cost, but also on high technology and innovation. Samsung, for example, is now synonymous with high technology, but the company was initially supported by the state, which allowed it to grow rapidly. Today, South Korea has surpassed Japan in certain areas of industry, and while China is very competitive, it struggles to compete in such sophisticated segments. The industrial giants: benefits and limits. But behind this success, considerable challenges remain. The large South Korean companies known as Chaebols, family-owned conglomerates, play a central role in the economy. These companies have been the backbone of the country's industrialization, but they have also created powerful monopolies that can stifle competition and keep prices high. However, this issue is not as visible within the country, as South Korea remains an export-oriented economy. Another major problem is the excessive concentration of wealth and power within these chaebols. These companies dominate the economy and offer much higher wages than small local businesses. This creates immense pressure on workers who spend their lives trying to secure a job in one of these prestigious companies. But this fierce competition for a limited number of positions in companies like Samsung or Hyundai diverts attention and talent from creating new businesses and fostering innovation. Moreover, these large companies tend to take on massive debt to expand their operations in capital-intensive sectors like shipbuilding or automobiles. This generates significant economic risks, especially during periods of global slowdown or financial crises. Towards an uncertain future, South Korea at a crossroads. South Korea is therefore at a crossroads. While its economic model has been successful, the country must now address major internal challenges. The concentration of wealth in the chaebols has created a highly unequal society, and the education system, although efficient, pushes younger generations to enter massive companies rather than fostering entrepreneurial spirit. Furthermore, the country's political situation remains unstable. Although South Korea is a democracy, the specter of military coups in authoritarian regimes is never far off. The recent declaration of martial law and the political crises that followed show that, while the country is economically powerful, its political stability remains fragile. In this video, we explored how South Korea, through its highs and lows, managed to rise among the world's great economic powers. But the question remains, can its economic model withstand the challenges of the 21st century? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain. South Korea's story is a valuable lesson on the opportunities and dangers of globalization, as well as the power of strategic economic policies. South Korea is a living example of resilience, but also a warning about the dangers of concentrating power and wealth. The question that now arises is, in the future, will South Korea continue to shine as a beacon of prosperity, or will it need to reinvent its model to face the challenges of the modern world?